We're here to chat about Decagon and agents. So I want to thank Bihan for joining me. And with that, let's get into it. I think it might be helpful to give maybe a little bit of introduction on yourself and your background and how you came to lead product at Decagon.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thank you everyone for being here and making it out through the rain. It's super exciting to see such a full room. And thank you to Pear and Harrison for hosting me. So I'm really excited to be here. Quick background for me, I'm Bihan. I lead product at Decagon. Decagon is a Series B startup building AI agents for customer service and customer support use cases. And prior to Decagon, I was at Scale AI for about 4 years doing engineering and product there too. So I've been working in the AI space for a bit and sort of went from one end of the AI spectrum, more on the data side and selling to foundation model companies, to now working more on the applied side. And so I think just seeing how the whole AI ecosystem has evolved from just the base models to the agentic layer and real use cases that are applied to a lot of enterprises has been really, really rewarding. So yeah, thank you again for having me here today.
And I think your background at Scale's particularly relevant for this conversation, an AI agent engine, because I think a lot of what Scale helps enable is things like that. And so we can touch on that. But first, what is Decagon for people that don't know?
Yeah, great question. So Decagon, for those who don't know, we build AI agents for customer support. And what that means is not just the agent that is responding to the humans when users are writing into the support experience, but also a whole support ecosystem around it. So as a user of consumer products or of B2B products, everyone here has probably written into customer support at least once. Maybe raise your hand if you've ever written into a support experience. And I guess most experiences are not ideal. I'm sure people have probably had terrible experiences waiting hours for someone to get connected to talk to them, or having to bounce between a lot of different specialists who might not have the right information to actually solve your issue. So traditionally, I think when people have thought about customer support, they have equated it with pain and suffering and a poor experience. And so what we're building at Decagon is a much better human-like experience with AI agents to help users like yourself get the support you need, solve the problems, and be more of your personal concierge when you are writing into a support system. And so what that can mean is anything from typing into a chat widget to ask what your order status is, or asking for a refund, or checking if something is back in stock. And it can also range from writing into email or even calling a support phone number. So we support all of these different use cases with our AI agents across a lot of different channels.
Why do you think customer support is such a good domain for agents? I feel like we talk with a bunch of companies who are either building it as products or building it internally, and I feel like it's one of the main areas that companies are tackling. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the reasons why customer support is such an interesting space for agents is because there is a lot of information, unstructured information that is readily available and historically has been built up. So a lot of internal knowledge bases, help center articles, agent, human agent standard operating procedures, which are essentially just these instructions for how to do and execute very complex workflows. And I think LLMs and just models in general have gotten really, really good to the point where they can take a lot of this unstructured data and make sense of it, and then actually generate things that are very helpful for humans. And sort of going a step further, not just the models themselves, being able to take data in and spit data out that is useful, but also being able to actually take actions and generate these human-like experiences where when you're going back and forth with an AI agent, it can ask you follow-up questions, it can see relevant information and draw a conclusion and fill in the gaps where in previous customer support interactions, unless you were following along the very happy path of a hard-coded workflow, you would probably fall off the cracks. And it's just really difficult in the sort of pre-Gen AI era of building for support to capture like 100% of all of the different ways that customers can write in. And so what you find is just a lot of the times, unless you perfectly are matched to a workflow that is built off of a decision tree, you're going to have a bad support experience.
Yeah, I think customer support and code are like the two biggest areas that we see people building in. And I think it's interesting to think about what the common like characteristics are and what the next big area will be. But we're here to talk about Decagon, and in particular, you wrote a great blog post titled "The AI Agent Engine," and we should have had a screenshot of the blog header up but it's. You probably can't see, but it's 5 things that go around in a circle, and it's basically 5 different components of an AI agent engine. And it kind of describes, or it mirrors this concept of like a data flywheel, which I think is prevalent in kind of like data science and other ML kind of like systems. So I want to walk through it because I think there are a lot of, I really like this because I think this resonated a lot with what we're seeing companies need to do and what we're trying to help companies do. And so I want to walk through the 5 components, and I'll maybe just say all of them to start, and then we can dive into them individually. But there's a core AI agent, then there's routing, then there's agent assist, then there's an admin dashboard, and then there's the QA interface. So let's start with the core AI agent. What is that? What does that mean?
Yeah, I know this can be a little bit overwhelming, so hopefully I can break it down in a way where all of the components make sense. The first really core piece of what we're building is this brain that handles all of the logic of a particular enterprise. And so this brain is something that gets loaded with knowledge, so any articles, information, data that the company wants to provide in context to the AI agent. But it also has actions and workflows. And so similarly to how you would onboard a human support agent and give them these different operating procedures or instructions or different cases where they have to use different workflows, like you would give similar things to our AI agent. And then you would also provide them the ability to perform certain actions. So for a human support agent, they might be able to click a button and issue a refund, or they might be able to look up someone's order status and then tell them, hey, like your order is 10 days away. And so providing all of this level of access and control to the AI agent is what builds up that core AI agent brain. And that brain is then able to be applied across all of these different channels. So that includes chat, email, SMS, voice, which is when you're calling the support number, and other channels as well.
Okay, a few follow-up questions. So I think like when I think of a general agent, one of the things that I think of first is like a React style agent, which is basically looping and calling tools, and then looping and calling tools kind of like in a cycle, similar to like AutoGPT or something like that. Is the core AI agent basically a loop like that, or is it more complicated under the hood?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the cool thing about agents is that you can have very, very simple agents that do that, and you can have more complex agents that do additional steps. You can also have multiple different types of agents that all work together and are sort of like reviewing each other's work or like looking for specific qualities. And so the way that we've been building AI agents internally is sort of this like whole ecosystem of agents, which then we abstract away into just like the agent brain. But I think it's very interesting how different companies are building agents differently.
Yeah, interesting. You also mentioned the modalities, text, voice, I think you mentioned, and that's something that we're seeing more and more interest in. Are there like, so is it the same agent brain across all these modalities, or are there differences, or where do the differences start and end, if there are any?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the different ways that users interact with different modalities is definitely something that we have to take into account from a product perspective. So for example, when you're writing into chat versus writing an email, you might expect a chat response back within less than a minute. But when you're sending an email, you're not refreshing your email every minute expecting a response back. And similarly for voice, when you're on the phone with someone and you're having a conversation, you probably expect them to reply nearly instantly, versus with chat, that you have like a few seconds buffer. And so there's a lot of these product constraints across different modalities that need to be taken into account. But what's really nice about the core AI agent brain is that you can apply the general logic and workflows and tools that it has access to across all of these different channels. And so the core workflow of issuing an order refund or looking up like product details or checking the distance to the nearest bank might be the same workflow-wise. And there might be some slight nuances of how you would present the instructions or how you would take the actions in different channels. But what's really nice about our product and why a lot of enterprises really enjoy kind of working with us is all of that logic can be stored and built up in the same way. So a company that has invested some time building out a chat agent can get all of that work essentially for free and transfer that to a voice agent.
Are you guys using the real-time API yet from OpenAI for voice?
That's some secret sauce
All right.
that you'll have to come work with us to learn.
This is good. This is good boundary setting. I like it. We did it early in the chat. Can't give away all secrets. You mentioned kind of standard operating procedures that they'd already had written in customer support settings. Are the way that we write instructions for humans transferable to AI agents? Can we just take those that were written for humans and just drop them in and they work pretty well for LLMs?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of transferable things that we can take from existing standard operating procedures. I think there's a few key differences. So the first is when you're telling the user to actually take an action within a standard operating procedure, the instructions that you have for that are going to be very different in a human training manual versus how you're going to tell the AI agent to do so. And an example is, are people here familiar with tool calling and function calling? Cool. So an example of a key difference is, you probably have this library of tools and actions instead that you want to provide your AI agent. And I think because standard operating procedures were a very a human decision tree oriented concept, I think our new ways of executing AI agents and having them follow instructions is actually even more dynamic and feels more human-like than even maybe what a human would be able to do.
It's more human than a human?
It can be more adaptive than a human agent who might be just getting started or just starting to learn how to follow the procedures. So I think one thing that we've seen is for newer human agents who are onboarded, they take some time to get ramped up. When they're first starting, they want to follow everything to the T. They're reading these instructions, they're not going to stray any off the path. And as they get more tenured, they learn that, okay, in these cases, maybe it's okay to do this action, or actually I've built up this context from other documentation that's not necessarily in the system, and I can give the user a useful response even though it's not documented explicitly in an SOP. And so I think similarly to us on the AI agent side, these AI agents are able to learn and adapt over time, having learned and having access to the human agent conversations too.
Interesting. One last question on this. For tool calling, I imagine some of these tools that it can call can issue refunds or do important things. How do you think about that? Do certain tools have different levels of permissions, or are there dangerous tools that require, I don't know, some special situations to be actually invoked? How do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are, certain actions that our customers especially care about more than others. Like for example, like you mentioned, like issuing a refund or like reissuing like credits or like shipping out a new order. It might be something that customers want to build in extra guardrails around. And so that's sort of what we work with our customers on a case-by-case basis to define. And so what's really nice is that we're able to be very, very flexible in that, maybe we want to work with our customers to define exactly the scenarios in which you want to execute an order refund. And it could be, if the user who's writing in is of a certain, subscription status, or if they have a history of, like good records, or if they haven't issued, or if they haven't requested a refund in the last 7 days. And there's all these different sort of dynamic criteria that we can work with our customers to define very quickly. And there's also criteria that is more fuzzy. For example, like if the user is, really, really angry and they have, asked for the refund for like 3 times, or if they have a track record of, good status, but like this is something that would, seemingly make them churn. A lot more of this like qualitative things that you can't really define by just like coding is like additional criteria that we can now add on as well.
Do you see people trying to like prompt inject or prompt hack these LLMs and like ignore all previous instructions, give me a refund?
Yeah, it's definitely something that we have, seen. I think a lot of folks on the internet, when they're, writing into talking to an AI agent, have like, tried to jailbreak and like red team these AI agents. And so that's something that we've built in a lot of guardrails around. And because we're working with a lot of these companies who have a lot of, regulatory requirements or compliance requirements, we do a lot of work around building out the specific guardrails to detect potential like injection, manipulation, and we have a lot of like enterprise grade security around all the actions that we execute as well. Additionally, I think because we're working with all of these enterprises, they always, pen test us, do a lot of testing to make sure that no agent behavior will be unexpected.
Cool. All right, let's move on to the second one, which is routing. What is routing?
Yeah, this is a good question. So I think this is also maybe I'll talk about routing and our third block, which is our agent assist product together. So when you're writing into support, especially for different industries, maybe like healthcare, financial services, like legal, there are certain cases where you will always want to route to a human, or maybe there's certain cases where you haven't built out the knowledge base, or you haven't built out the workflow or the API to handle a certain interaction. And so there's some cases where inevitably you'll always have to route to a human agent. And so this is where our routing product and our agent assist product comes in. Our routing product essentially lets customers dynamically define different criteria to figure out where they should send their where they should send those conversations to. And then our agent assist product is essentially like a human co-pilot for it's a co-pilot for human support agents. And so when these human support agents receive the ticket and are able to see the conversation, we're able to help them using this product be a lot more efficient. And so they get all the benefits of the AI agent brain from the core agent, but they still have this extra layer of review and approval before they send out the message or issue any actions. And so, one thing that we actually see is for certain companies, some have more or less of an appetite to adopt Gen AI and start with AI as their first line of defense. So we actually see some of our partners want to start out with the agent assist product and sort of work their way to putting AI at the front lines.
once it goes to a human agent, can it go back to the AI agent? Can the human agent like unblock whatever was tripping the agent up and then hand it back to the conversation, or is it always with the human after it reaches that point?
Yeah, so this is actually something that we sort of can modify on a customer by customer basis. So some customers really prefer that, once it goes to a human, that's the final layer. But we also work with folks where if the human agent is managing like multiple, conversations at once, and after a certain time threshold has passed, if the AI agent can, jump in and help out, that's a configurable, behavior that our customers can work with us for.
You've mentioned like adjusting the agent to the customer a few times. Like, what does that process look like? Is that like YAML or JSON like configuration file, or is there some sort of SDK? Like, how do you adapt these agents to each customer?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one thing that is super important for all these enterprises is being able to be very customized with their AI agent, because it's essentially a representation of their brand and their image and their company. And so what you really don't want is an AI agent going off the rails and saying something that would hurt the brand's reputation or make the company look bad. And so when we're really, early on in the deployment process with our customers, we work really, really closely with them to define, exactly what sort of like brand guidelines, tone, structure, specific nuances into like how they want to present themselves to different, segments of customers. And there's a lot of different ways that we do this. The secret sauce, you'll have to come work with us to find out. But essentially, we are able to, adjust things like tone, brand guidelines, even just like the structure of like how you're responding. Some customers want you to respond in like very concise, short bullet points, versus some are more, conversational or want like longer responses. And so we work really closely with our customers to tune all of that behavior and test it also before deploying it to more customers.
That maybe gets into the next point, which is the agent or admin dashboard. Sorry, what is the admin dashboard?
Yeah, so the admin dashboard, and so far we've talked about the core AI agent, routing, and the agent assist product. So the conversation lifecycle so far has gone from the user writing in, AI agent handles some of it, human agent handles some of it. All of that data from both the AI agent and the human agent is able to flow back into our admin dashboard. And so this is where our customers will spend a lot of their time. So our customers, when we are working with them to deploy these AI agents, first are going to be building out that agent with us through this dashboard. So this dashboard contains all of the sort of building blocks that we're going to be using to configure the AI agent in a way that is representative of their brand, has access to the relevant knowledge, the workflows, and like the actions that can be taken. But after building out this agent, it also includes all the functionality to test and roll out the agent in a way that is safe and makes sure that nothing breaks. So in terms of new changes to the agent, you want to always test and make sure that you're not causing any unexpected behavior. And as you're rolling out the agent and like having more and more users interact with it and having all that user data flow back into it, you're also able to monitor and get insights and analytics around how people are using it. And so a couple of the main metrics that people care about, especially in the customer support space, is first deflection. So that's the number or percentage of conversations where the AI agent can handle it without having to escalate it to a human. And some folks also may call this the automation rate. And so generally, a higher deflection or automation rate is desirable because you want to have the AI agent handle more of the simpler or routine queries, and so that the human agent team can focus on the more targeted, complex, interesting work. The second stat that most companies care about is the customer satisfaction score, or CSAT. And some folks may call it NPS too. So this is just a representative of, how are the customers feeling about this experience. So all of that, the metrics monitoring also live in the admin dashboard, and it's what really continuously improves a lot of that agent over time too.
You mentioned a lot of things that we spend a lot of time thinking about with Langsmith in terms of like testing, monitoring. One of the big areas we work with people on and hear people struggling with is testing and evaluating agents. What is, like, particularly in like an offline manner? You mentioned tracking some metrics in a more like online manner. What does testing these agents in an offline manner look like for you and your customers?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, testing is really important and also a really hard thing generally to do well, because there's always ways that customers are going to be, interacting with your agent that you might not expect. And so there's sort of two phases of testing that we generally do. One is pre-deployment. And so this is where our customers and our team will work really closely together to develop these test sets of conversations where we want to make sure the AI agent is responding in an expected way. And so when we are able to create these test sets, you're able to test things like, okay, is it responding in the tone that's expected? Is the formatting what's expected? You can also test for things like, is it pulling the right information and actually providing the correct answer? Is it finding the correct workflow to execute and calling the right tools to be able to take the actions I expect it to? And so everything from as simple as did it respond appropriately in the tone to did it follow this complex workflow is something that we want to test before we launch. And then
for testing, I think there's in my mind, there's two big parts. There's like the data and then the metrics. And so you mentioned the data, you work with your customers to build up these sets, but maybe diving into that a little, like how big are these sets? Are these like 10 data points, a million data points? Like what do you typically recommend people get started with?
Yeah, I think this also really, we've seen a lot of variance across different customers. I think naturally for a lot of customers who are dealing with more sensitive use cases or data, a lot of them will have pre-built data sets or evaluation criteria that they come to us with. And then for some of our customers who are more, don't have as many of these requirements, they might be starting from a blank slate. It might be the first time they're even thinking about how to implement an AI agent, or the first time they're thinking about what do I even care about in terms of an evaluation criteria. And so in those cases, what we generally do is for each of their different use cases that they want to build out, we work with them to create a pretty comprehensive, maybe a couple hundred conversations per workflow to be able to cover the different paths. But it really depends based on how much customer data that they have, how many workflows they are building out, the kind of configuration and combination of all of those. But generally, we try to have coverage over all possible paths that the agent could take.
And then for metrics, you mentioned measuring tone. Is that using an LLM as a judge, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so this is also configurable and maybe part of the secret sauce. But generally, when we're doing the evaluation, we have a way to set this evaluation criteria. And so there will be an agent that is doing this evaluation where it's ingesting or taking in a conversation, a bunch of information that at runtime, the agent might have access to, generating the response, and then sort of doing that evaluation of based on the evaluation criteria, did it follow all of the instructions? Did it check off all of these other things I care about? And then essentially return a score.
Cool. I feel like I might have interrupted you. Was there anything else on testing that jumps to mind?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of that testing is pre-deployment. And so as you are actually launching the AI agent, and this is something that I think is generally pretty true across all of ML, how your data distribution looks like in the wild is not going to look like what's in your test set. And also that data distribution will change over time as users are asking about different things. So if you think about writing into support for a company that's releasing new products, the types of questions that people might ask will change depending on the products that are released. Like you might have people asking net new questions that have never been asked before. And so as we are working with our partners to roll out the agent and getting a lot of this conversation data, we will also then continuously look at, what are people asking? Like, do we have tests in our test set that are covering what people are asking? Are there net new tests we need to create? Are there ways that people are sort of interacting with the agent that we didn't expect, and we want to create net new tests out of these conversations? So we generally think about testing in the two different phases, the pre-deployment phase and then the ongoing continuous improvement phase too.
Awesome. The final area is QA interface. What's that?
Yeah, so QA, or just quality management in general, is a pretty big part of ensuring that the AI agents are able to continuously get better, and that they're performing as expected. So at a high level, you have a lot of the metrics how many conversations are we able to handle with the AI agent, or what are customers rating the interaction. But to get really granular, deep feedback on how people are actually interacting with the agent, you still need someone to go through and analyze how those conversations are going. And so we found that as we deploy these AI agents into production, generally some best practices are as you're launching to, or as you're starting to scale out to your first batch of users, doing quick QA iteration loops before rolling out the agent more broadly, to be able to catch a lot of those edge cases or different changes that you might want to make early on. So what that might look like is you roll out your AI agent to 5% of users, you gather the conversation data, and you have the QA team or the Decagon team go through and analyze these conversations. So create certain, create a QA taxonomy, maybe you're evaluating for accuracy, or maybe you're evaluating for the topic. And so you would define criteria that you want to evaluate, and then someone would go through and then essentially label or categorize or QA those conversations in both either a quantitative way, you can use a preset taxonomy, or a qualitative way, you can leave open-ended comments and feedback. And that's something that you can then, because it's all in one platform, really quickly see and aggregate and figure out what changes you need to make to your AI agent.
Awesome. All right, I think we've gone through the 5, so we'll probably open it up for questions now. As people think about them, I'll maybe ask you one. You've mentioned a few times that in order to see the secret sauce, would have to come work at Decagon. What roles are you hiring for, and how can I apply?
Yeah, so we are hiring across the board. I think one of the most interesting things to work on right now generally is our AI agents. I might be biased, but I think it's just one of the most interesting things in the past couple of decades. And I think what we're working on, there's a lot of challenges across how you think about building the agents, the different agent experiences that different customers might expect or have. The product that you're building for the customer who is building the agent and seeing the insights and analytics is going to be different from the product that you're building for the customer's end user who's actually writing into the support system and interacting with the agent. And it's also going to be different from the product that you're building for the human support agent who is using the AI as a co-pilot. And so there's a lot of these different interesting product problems. Obviously, we're hiring for product folks. So if you're interested, I would love to talk. But across the board, we're hiring product, design, engineering, sales. Shout out to Katie in the back somewhere who is from our sales team. Generally, we have all these open roles listed on our website, but We're still, like a startup. Like one of the most fun things about building right now is like everyone's just like in a giant room together, like hacking on things, like building things, but also like as we scale up the team, there's always going to be room for just like generally smart, talented people who want to work on these interesting things. So yeah, if you're interested in building AI agents across any open roles or non-open roles, would love to chat.